In the early 1920s, the newly formed movie industry was America's most glamorous and profitable business. One of its most highly regarded directors was a 49-year-old Englishman named William Desmond Taylor.
Taylor was one of the top directors at Paramount. He had his own production unit, his own name above the title.
Well-educated, erudite, urbane, sophisticated, often found at home reading at night instead of out swilling illegal hooch, and was nicknamed the gentleman director.
But Taylor's place in the history of Hollywood changed dramatically on the cold morning of February 2nd, 1922, when Taylor's manservant, Henry Peavy, arrived for work.
He found it odd that the living room lights were already on. Mr. Taylor usually wasn't down that early. He walked in, and in the glow of the incandescent bulbs, he saw Taylor on the floor, dead. Peavy ran out of the bungalow into the courtyard and began screaming that Mr. Taylor was dead.
When the police arrived on the scene, there were various people all over the house.
The studio personnel were running around, making off with all-important letters, documents, possible evidence, bits of clothing, muddling the murder scene. The whole place was covered in fingerprints. You would never been able to tell one from another.
They were removing things because they didn't want anything unfavorable to reflect upon the dead man.
The one clue police were able to find came from Faith McLean, Taylor's neighbor. At about 8 o'clock the previous evening, she heard what she thought was a gunshot.
Seconds after the shot was fired, she went to her door, which is very close to Taylor's door, put her face to the screen, up against the screen door, and saw a man standing on Taylor's front doorstep.
In an overcoat with the collar turned up, or maybe a muffler around his neck, and a cap pulled down over his face. And this person was not panicked or fearful. As a matter of fact, when he saw Faith looking at him, he leaned back into Taylor's bungalow as if he was saying goodnight.
A conductor on a nearby trolley car claimed a man matching McLean's description boarded his car shortly after 8. Coming up, the butler who knew too much and a blackmail that may have ended in murder.
Perfect Crimes will continue in a moment here on the History Channel. We now return to Perfect Crimes, the case of William Desmond Taylor, here on the History Channel.
When director William Desmond Taylor was found shot to death in February 1922, suspicion immediately fell on his former valet, Edward Sands.
He was an employee of Taylor's, and he worked as a cook, a valet, and secretary. Kind of an all-around man. He did a little bit of everything for Taylor.
The summer before the murder, Sands did something that wasn't in his job description.
Taylor went off to Europe and left the house in the hands of Sands, and it was during that period that Sands took the opportunity to forge some checks, several thousand in checks, and steal clothing and jewelry, and in fact, Taylor's car, and hightailed it out of town at that point.
Taylor filed charges, but by then, Sands was long gone. In December 1921, a month before the murder, Sands made sure Taylor knew who'd robbed him.
He sent him a pawn ticket and had signed it Dean Tanner.
Police asked, who was Dean Tanner?
Within a few days of the murder, it was revealed that William Desmond Taylor was really someone else. Someone named William Cunningham Dean Tanner. Who had deserted a wife and child in New York in 1908 and had at that time changed his name.
He was a man born in Ireland. He came to the United States. He married, became an antique dealer, had a daughter, and disappeared and never heard from him again.
Tanner made his way to Los Angeles. Using the alias William Desmond Taylor, he got work as an actor. One of his early films, The Quakeress, made in 1912, still survives. By 1914, he had begun to make a name for himself as a director. But even to his closest friends, he kept his past a tightly guarded secret. Somehow Sands found out, and perhaps was using what he knew to blackmail his boss. When Taylor wouldn't give him what he wanted, Sands shot him. But one detail didn't fit.
Faith McLean said that she did not think the person she saw was Sands, and she knew Sands well, having seen him frequently during the time that he worked for Taylor.
If the mystery suspect wasn't Sands, who was it? A second theory involved the last person known to have seen Taylor alive.
Mabel Normand was a great star, a great comedian of the silent screen, and she and Taylor were very close. I believe that they were in love. I think he would have married her in a second, and he certainly had asked her to marry him on several occasions, but she was unable to commit.
Taylor spent the last evening of his life entertaining Normand in his home.
She had the bad luck to be the last person to see Taylor alive.
She had her chauffeur drive her over to Taylor's home, arrived about 7 o'clock in the evening, and then at about 7:45, she and Taylor walked out to her car at the curb.
She got in, she kissed the glass, kissed him goodbye. The lipstick print was on the glass. She went home. 5 minutes later, there was a shot.
Though police soon dismissed Normand as a suspect, they did uncover a darker side to her relationship with Taylor.
Drugs were everywhere. You know, there was anybody who wanted it could get anything. It's sort of like there was the fast crowd and not so fast. The fast crowd all took drugs. Mabel was part of the fast crowd.
Taylor was very concerned about the drug gangsters in Hollywood and wanted to see them cleaned out of Hollywood.
He had confronted several of them, and in an aggressive sort of way, and at a time when it just wasn't the safest thing to do.
So according to this theory, the drug gangs decided to eliminate Taylor, to eliminate his interference in their business. So they hired a professional killer.
But the shadowy figure seen outside Taylor's door hardly behaved like a professional hitman. Police rounded up every underground figure they could lay their hands on, but weren't able to come up with a single shred of evidence to support the hitman theory. What they did uncover pointed them in an entirely different direction. When police searched Taylor's home after his murder, they found a pink nightgown and a love letter. The letter was from a 19-year-old actress named Mary Miles Minter.
She was a very prominent actress in the silent film industry and had one of the highest paying contracts, movie contracts worth over $1 million. It appears she developed a very severe, strong crush on him. In her mind, she was completely in love with him.
Taylor may have returned those affections, but the mother, Charlotte Shelby, quickly put an end to that.
Mary Miles Minter had an enormous salary that was controlled by Charlotte Shelby, her mother.
Charlotte Shelby would have lost a very large income if her daughter fell in love and married and kept her own money.
Shelby did everything in her power to keep Mary away from Taylor.
She was constantly invading his office, pulling out a hat pin, threatening him with it, threatening him with guns. She was a manic, crazy, over-the-top showbiz monster mother.
Charlotte Shelby had actually publicly said, if you come near my daughter again, I will shoot you.
One day, in the summer of 1920, Shelby openly accused Mary of being intimate with Taylor. Mary grabbed the family revolver.
She took the gun, rushed upstairs saying she was going to end it all. They heard gunshots, rushed into the room, and Mary was lying on the floor. She had her hand over her face and then moved her eyes and went, ha ha.
The gun was never located by police, but 15 years after the murder, bullets taken from it were found in Shelby's home.
The bullet which killed Taylor was identical to unfired bullets taken from Shelby's gun. So Shelby had a weapon identical to the murder weapon, if not the murder weapon itself.
On February 1st, 1922, the day before Taylor's body was found, Shelby and her daughter got into another heated argument over Taylor.
Shelby had overheard a phone conversation between Mary and Taylor that Mary was going to elope with Taylor that day.
Furious, Shelby locked Mary in her bedroom and stormed out of the house.
Charlotte Shelby stated that at the time of the murder, she was at the family mansion, that she was there with Carl Stockdale. He was a bit player, an actor. He certainly supported the alibi, but on the other hand, it was reported that Carl Stockdale received $200 a month from Charlotte Shelby for the rest of his life, and what was he being paid for?
At the time of the crime, Charlotte Shelby was never so much as questioned by police. Rumors spread that she was the person seen outside Taylor's door, dressed in men's clothing, and that she was paying off the local DA to secure her innocence. But in 1937, 15 years after the murder, Shelby stunned her accusers by publicly demanding that the allegations against her be heard before a grand jury. Prosecutors agreed to reopen the case. Mary testified, declaring to the jury that her mother was innocent. But then Shelby's older daughter, Margaret, took the stand. Though her secret testimony has never been released, she reportedly accused her mother of committing the murder and paying off the DA.
Margaret was accusing everybody of everything. Margaret was a raging paranoid and had suffered from extreme and severe paranoid delusions. She hated her mother because the mother was constantly crossing her in terms of money and everything else. And it would thrill her to think all those years later, well, many years later always happened, that people would suddenly suspect her mother.
In the end, the grand jury neither indicted nor exonerated Charlotte Shelby. But one piece of forensic evidence in her defense was the unusual angle at which Taylor had been shot.
The shot was fired from a .38 caliber revolver. He was shot at very close range, within 1 or 2 inches from the body. The bullet entering the left side at about where the elbow would hang naturally.
The path of the bullet went up below this lower rib, passed up through the chest area, missing the heart and other vital organs, and almost exited at the neck.
It was found that the hole in Taylor's vest did not match the hole in the jacket unless the left arm was raised. So that led to speculation as to why was the left arm raised. Was he holding up his hands, or was his arm raised because he was embracing someone?
He was shot by a most short and unimposing person. That person would have had to be no more than 5 feet tall to aim the bullet at that special point. They'd also have to have been in a very tight embrace with the victim.
It's hard to conceive of how Charlotte Shelby would have gotten that close to Taylor and shot him at that angle.
Could she have got close to someone who hated her and she hated him to hold him in a deadly embrace? Impossible.
Perhaps the reason Shelby was so willing to face a jury was because she knew she was innocent, and she also knew who was guilty.
The only theory, I believe, that fits all the available facts is the following. For weeks, months, and over a year, Mary Miles Minter was trying desperately to get William Desmond Taylor either to make physical love to her, or better still, get him to promise her his hand in marriage.
There had been an incident where Mary Miles Minter had gone to Taylor's home late at night, had undressed and begged for his love, and Taylor had refused and sent her home. She wanted Taylor to be her white knight who would take her away from the evil witch of her mother. And when Taylor refused to do that, her frustration could have easily turned to rage.
Margaret testified that on the night of the murder, Mary escaped from the bedroom where her mother had locked her.
I don't believe she went there to kill him deliberately, but it happened. She took the gun to threaten him. She has that .38 Smith & Wesson in the long sleeve of her gown. She embraces him, begging him to make love to her. He doesn't. In the course of that embrace, she accidentally presses the very delicate trigger of a Smith & Wesson .38. He falls stunned to the floor. She's not sure what's going on. She's hysterical. She's trying to keep calm. She can't go to a doctor. She can't go to the police. What is she going to do? She stretches him out on that floor and prepares him.
The body was found not collapsed on the floor, but carefully laid out, as if for a funeral.
There were 3 strands of blonde hair which were found on Taylor's body, supposedly under the lapel of his jacket. Investigators had that hair taken and compared with hair taken from Mary Miles Minter's hairbrush, which was taken from the studio, and they were found to be identical.
According to her sister Margaret, Mary returned home around 8:30 that evening, nervous and upset. The only other witness to whatever it was that Mary may have said or done that night was their maid, Belle Simpson. 1 year later, Charlotte Shelby had her committed to a state mental asylum. Simpson later told relatives that she was in trouble because of something she knew about the murder. She remained in the asylum until her death 39 years later. Did Hollywood's paragon of innocence commit the perfect crime? Or maybe, in this crowd of suspects, the real killer has been overlooked entirely until now.
And then she said that she had shot and killed William Desmond Taylor.
"42 years after Taylor's murder, in another part of Hollywood, neighbors rushed to the aid of an elderly woman who had collapsed in her home. While they waited for the ambulance to arrive, she revealed to them a secret she had never told another living soul.
She then went on to relate that she had been a silent screen performer during the 1910s, 1920s. And she went on to say that she had shot and killed a William Desmond Taylor.
An hour later, she was dead. The only clue she left was an aging steamer trunk.
On opening it, we found it was filled with theatrical stills.
Ray Long recognized the youthful face of his elderly neighbor and began a 5-year quest to uncover her hidden past. Long discovered that both she and William Desmond Taylor had worked in Denver, Colorado theaters as early as 1910. By 1911, both were working as actors in Hollywood. They even starred together in 4 films. In 1918, Gibson, at age 28, was finding it hard to get work playing innocent young women. In an effort to reinvent herself and revive her career, she changed her name to Patricia Palmer. But good parts were still few and far between. In early 1921, she got work on a serial western, Rounding Up the Law. It was filmed on the Paramount lot.
That would have afforded Patricia Palmer the opportunity to observe at very close range the relationship between Mary Miles Minter and William Desmond Taylor.
Perhaps an old jealousy was rekindled. Perhaps Taylor's final embrace and the blonde hairs left on his collar were clues that ultimately lead to a spurned woman's broken heart.
Hell hath no fury as a woman scorned, and I suspect that was one of the reasons or one of the motives for the killing.